So let's talk about some goals. In the past, I've always done this part of my training around revenue. And, I made this much this year. I want to make this much next year. But what I've realized is revenue obviously is a great target. But if we were to break this down a little bit better and get a little bit more granular with it, I think you'll be able to get to that goal. Now, maybe you should still have a revenue goal. If you know what this year is, you'll know next year you want to, grow by 10% or something like that. So you probably know what that number is, but I want to get a little bit more granular with this. And I'm going to give you some tools that will help you with this as well. So we're going to do a little work here. So to start out, here's some numbers that we need you to know. So you need to know these numbers. How many installs did you do per month on average in 2022? So figure out how many you did, divide it by 12, you'll have a pretty good idea of how many per month, right? So that is that. And let me see, let me go back one slide here. Go to this bit.ly/YIMP-worksheet. And that is going to take you to a Google Sheet. So I'm going to switch over there and do this with you guys. So you should see my screen here with Google Chrome. So I'm just going to type in bit.ly/YIMP-worksheet. And it should take you to a worksheet that looks like this. Okay. Now from here, and by the way, I'm looking over to my laptop here. So from here, what the first thing you're going to want to do is go up to the top left and click on File and then Make a Copy. Because my copy is, you can't edit this copy. So if you make a copy for yourself, then of course you can edit that as well. So bit.ly/YIMP-worksheet. It's also in the chat if you want to go there. So make a copy of this so you have your own copy. Okay. Then we're going to kind of go through some numbers. So we're going to refer back to that in just a minute here. So again, how many installs did you do per month? That's going to give you a really good baseline of how many you achieved. What is your average cost per lead? So for every lead that you get, whether that is somebody filling out a form on your website, calling because they saw your commercial on TV, or using a chat widget, or they got your a referral from somebody else. Take all those sources. You should be able to figure out what is your average cost per lead. And if you don't know that number, I have a number that we could put in there. Typically for window treatments and awnings, we see between $75 and $160 cost per lead average. So, so if you don't know a number, we'll just take something like 125 bucks. So for every 125 you spend, you should get a lead for that. That's kind of middle of the road. It depends on, how long you've been doing things, how much tracking you have in place, that number could be driven down to be even cheaper. All right, next, what is your conversion rate? So again, everybody that is a referral, everybody that calls, everybody that fills out a form on your site, out of them, how many do you close? So is it 6 out of 10? Is it 4 out of 10? Is it 90%, right? What is your conversion rate for all of the leads that you get? Lastly, what is your average job worth? So again, of all the jobs you did, take that number, divide the revenue by the number of jobs you did, and that should give you an average job value. For most of our clients on the window treatment side, that's between $3,000 and $4,000. On the awning side, usually a bit more, closer to maybe $5,000 or $6,000 average job. All right, so once we have these numbers, I'm sure you could see what we're going to be doing here. David said, could you repeat the cost per lead dollar amount again? Yeah, so cost per lead is what does it cost you to get a lead, right? And that includes referrals, which of course is basically free to get that lead, right? But then you've got paid ads, right? So you might be spending a lot to get those leads. So out of all the money you spend to get leads, how much is it on average to get each one of those? Typically for window treatments and awnings, again, we see somewhere between $75 and $160 cost per lead. So we average that out. If you don't know your number there, we average that out to around $125, something like that. All right, so plug those numbers into the Google Sheet, and you'll see there's a row for 2022. So we'll plug those numbers in. So if you did 20 installs a month on average, you'd put that number in there, and then that would automatically do the math for you, basically multiply it by 12. And then average customer value, we just talked about that. What is your average job worth? Plug that number in there. So those are the only two numbers you'll need on this particular page. Anybody having trouble with the sheet? If you're unable to edit this, then make sure you do a file, make a copy, and then you should be able to edit your own version of this. So once you've got the installs per month, average customer value, the next thing we're going to want to do is think about next year. So now that we know what 2022 looked like, what do we want 23 to look like, right? And instead of thinking about revenue increase, let's think about installs per month. How many more installs per month can I do, or can we handle? Or even if I have to hire somebody, what is a reasonable number that I can get to next year, right? So if that number is 20 for this year, then let's say I want to grow by 20% next year and do 24 installs a month. So you'd put that number in the 2023 area. And really, that's the only number that you'll need on this sheet for next year, because your average customer value probably isn't going to change unless you get more high-end jobs, better jobs. Maybe that number goes up, but I would say leave it the same, so that we're comparing apples to apples here. All right, so those are your 2023 numbers. Everything else is really going to stay the same. The only thing that really changes is how many do you want to do next year. But hopefully this gives you a little bit different perspective on how to ultimately achieve your revenue goal. So plug that in under the 2023. Now what we're going to do is at the bottom of this page, you'll see another tab down here called Key Goals and Revenue Targets. Click on that. And now you should see something that looks like this. Goals and revenue targets, lead flow, required investment, all in budget, blah, 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 right? You should see that on here. So now if you might have to flip back and forth between the two tabs for a minute. In the first box here, it says installs per year. So whatever number you put in the installs per month, the next one over shows you installs per year. In my case, that number is 288 if I want to grow by 20%. So 288 installs per year is where I want to be. So I put that number in. Next, your cost per lead. Again, if you don't know what this number is, you can use the 125. And then that can be a goal for you to start figuring out what is your average cost per lead across all the different platforms or things that you're doing, and start to really get a good idea of what that number is. Because ultimately, if you can drive that number down, that means leads are getting cheaper, obviously. So you can spend maybe the same amount of money, but get more leads for that. So next is your close rate. We talked about that earlier. So out of 10 or out of 100, how many are you typically closing? What is that percentage? In this case, I chose 60%. And then revenue per job, or what is your average job worth? And that was from, we talked about that on the other page as well. So once you plug in these four numbers, now what you'll see in the next section down is your lead flow required. So you'll see that down there with the numbers that I plugged in. that means I need annually 480 leads for the year in order to hit my goal, which is 40 leads per month. Since my close rate is 60%, out of those 40 people that reach out to me, I should be able to close 24 of those. And then, of course, we're spending money on leads that don't convert, right? So we kind of need a better reality of what are we really spending on a cost per lead basis. So all in, with all the leads that we get, the leads that we aren't able to close, $277 is the real all-in cost for acquisition for a client. So again, you can see how driving that cost per lead down across like paid ads and things like this really helps drive down the ultimate number for you. So after this little bit of work, what we're really after here is the monthly minimum of leads per month. So now you know how many leads per month you need if you want to hit that goal. Now, the really cool thing about this is it's interactive, right? You can go back and change these numbers. If if you take some sales training and you get better at sales, maybe this changes to 70%, right? Now, you don't need as many leads because you're going to close more of those leads that call in. So it changes the close rate as you're able to drive down your cost per lead by, not spending it on things that maybe aren't working, right? Maybe you're running a magazine ad that's just not working or not converting for you. Take that money and put it towards something that's working better. That's going to help drive down the ultimate cost per lead for you. So let's say you get that down to 110, just by doing that, now you're going to be able to drive some other things down. Obviously, the other thing you can do, raise your rates, right? If you can raise your prices and maybe revenue per job goes up to 3,000 over the next year, that's another way that you could look at this as well. That's going to end up in more revenue down the road. So we're going to circle back and look at this sheet a little bit more. But any questions just looking at these first two areas? Any questions about numbers you plugged in? How to change this? Anything around those lines?